Well, hello everyone, and welcome again to Hands Across the Water. This is our first Ulsterbear Friday. This is episode 1, and our guest is Graeme Hanna. Graeme, how are you keeping, mate?
Hello, William. Good evening. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you on, buddy. Just before we start and we get into it, there's actually quite a bit to talk about towards the end as well. We're going to talk about general Northern Ireland Rangers fans, about travelling over, different memories, all those kind of things. We're going to hear from Graeme about his own club and stuff. There's a few bits of news about Jeffy and Cortez and Jeff, they've both been put out of the European squad for the game against Bruges. Mikey Moore and Asgard have put in. So we'll have a chat about all that and what that might mean towards the end. But before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors for tonight's show, the Bars for Bears FC. It's a football club, charity football club. Some ex-Rangers players play for them as well. They've also got a page on Facebook with nearly 40,000 followers. If you post in there, wherever you are in the world, they will find you a bar to watch the Rangers game. So it's a great wee football club. Do a lot for charity and a great wee page to find out how to find or to watch the Rangers. But now we've got all that done. What about you, Graeme? How are you keeping, mate? I was really glad you've come on, buddy.
Yes, all good, mate. Busy. Uh, well, up until a couple of weeks ago, I was going to say it's good to have the football season back, but already it feels like we've been down this road before. But no, busy with work, busy with family, and it is better that the football's back, and hopefully, things are going to turn a bit better for us very soon because it needs to.
It does, mate. As you say, it's like a tired old movie, isn't it? We've seen it so many times, and it's like hopefully it's not going to be the same again. But it's not been a great start, mate. But people did warn us if when Russell Martin came in, there would be a month or two at least of maybe watching through your fingers a wee bit. Maybe we're hoping for a wee bit more than what we've got so far. But again, we'll chat about all that, Graeme, and your thoughts on the 49ers and Russell Martin and how the team's getting on sort of towards the end. But just about you, it's your Ranger story. This is why we've got you on, Graeme. Just a bit about yourself, mate. You're in a local Ranger supporters club, but like myself. So to let you tear away, mate, and just tell everyone about yourself.
Yes, well, I'm now in my mid to late 30s. I'm 37, so lifelong Rangers supporter from Belfast, from the Shankill direction. I'm just an ordinary Rangers supporter, with my own story. A lot of fond memories from growing up, seeing the back end of 9 in a row, watching Dick Advocaat's team, uh, then through to going to the games on my own or with mates, through Alec McLeish, the ill-fated Paul Le Guen era, Walter's return, and everything since then. We were just speaking the other night when we were setting up the call that it's funny, kind of guys of our generation, that we remember having to go to places like Whitehead and Larne to watch games in the mid to late 90s, when there was no internet or no plethora of TV channels to watch the games on. So you had to go near the coast to pick up a TV signal. That was what you done back in the day. I remember watching the Gaza 8 in a row game against Aberdeen down there in one of the clubs. But nowadays it's simple. Anything's at your fingertips, and if you need to, you take a short holiday to wherever you need to go to watch a game on a certain channel. But no, I love being a Rangers supporter. It's part of who I am. It's part of my upbringing and my identity. We've all got our different opinions about different things
Yeah.
in life, but certainly my Rangers background is one that I'm very proud of. My dad first took me when I was 3. I think I don't remember that one. I'm sure you'll excuse me. You'll not well, you will excuse me for that.
We'll
Sorry.
not call you out in that one.
No. But I was watching. It might have been one of the previous videos, and talking about everybody remembers their first game. I actually don't, but with lots of old photos, as it was back then, you took your photos on a big thing that you held up, and then you left it in the chemists or wherever, or a place in town. But there's photos at my mum and dad's of a game against Kilmarnock in the mid-90s. And certain wee aspects of that game are the first to stick in my head. Weirdly, remembering, like Kilmarnock have that weird badge with the two fingers in it at the top and the
Yeah.
squirrel. We things like that, and the sponsors and stuff on the shirts. But no, a lot of fond memories, of my childhood growing up, going on the boat. It still is for a lot of people today of all ages. The games, it's a big day out. You look forward to it. We work hard. We want to see our team, see our friends. Many of us, have a few drinks and enjoy ourselves. For a few people, that's a priority. But no, everybody's out for a good time. It's even looking now, kids going over. You see them taking everything around them on the boat, kind of getting impatient on the bus. And then you're coming down the motorway, and then from the stadium, the famous main stand appears, and you've made it to Ibrox. Uh, the bus culture and the organised travel of Rangers supporters from Northern Ireland, it's very important to me. It's a tradition that's lasted decades, and I hope that continues for some time to come.
Yeah.
People are dedicated. You'll have your hardcore, who don't miss a match. We both know of, some people who go home and away. But generally, most people try to get to as many games as possible. With family commitments, now that I'm a dad myself, I only get over roughly once a month. It's frustrating in some ways because you want to be at all games, you want to consume everything Rangers and be there, but real life sometimes means you can't. But we all do what we can in our own ways. We'll make our sacrifices to support the team to get to the games, and the buses, do a great job of getting people over to the matches, keeping in with the buses and the boats. Some people can take it for granted that there's a bus running to the match, but I know from my own supporters club that it's not easy, to run a club. It's not easy to run buses every other week to keep them going season after season. Supporters clubs will have their natural ups and downs, whether it's through attendance, finance, people coming and going at different stages of life, but uh, good on everybody that keeps the clubs going and keeps everything ticking over. Yourself, William, there's a contingent that leaves from Belfast every other Saturday, and
Yeah.
the North Ulster guys as well from Larne. Because you don't see some people a lot of the time, you can forget that they're there. But there's a very healthy Rangers support from Northern Ireland, and long may it continue.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And it brings back memories for myself as well. My father brought me over when I was 9. That was my first game. So I was actually very lucky because it was a game based on Dunfermline. It was a 7-0 win. I ended up Negri scored 4 that day, and Loudrup scored 1, and Gaza scored 2. If you could have guys like that again, but it was taken for granted, wasn't it, mate? Because obviously when we're similar in age, and we just, you went over in the boat and you were talking about how much you were going to win. That's just the way it was. If you remember yourself, and that's what it was. And sometimes, weirdly, if the other team scored, it actually brought a wee bit of excitement. They're like, "Oh, we're actually in for a bit of a thrill here today. We're going to, we'll beat them 4-1." However, that hasn't been the case for quite some time, as you know, mate. It's a lot more trickier for us now, and other teams in Scotland as well are probably their levels increased. Whether our level obviously has decreased quite a lot with the money, we can't spend the same amounts and stuff. But yeah, mate, as you see, like my father brought me over, I would say at least twice a month. You got your home games anyway. We were in the Lagan Valley Club in Lisburn here,
Mhm.
out at the Maze. That's where the club started. So I've been going since that age. But as you say, mate, I've got 3 daughters myself, and you run the house, and and you've got a young family. It's not just as easy to get over all the time. So we try to get over as much as I can. But the memories on the boat, mate, I'm sure you've got millions of them yourself. But it's weird, isn't it? Because it's like a family when you're going every week and you're seeing people from all the different clubs, and you get to know them all by first name, and it's the same old faces all the time. And when I came up to your club, we used done your anniversary do there not too long ago, mate. That was a great night you put on. And again, I was just sitting there saying to my dad, like, do you remember him and him? And you're pointing at all the older guys and going, I remember. It's weird, but you don't know them as say, outside of that boat. But it's as if you grew up with them because it's people you always remember from your youth. And it's great to
Yeah,
see so many of them still involved.
that's it. And then the guys that still do all the European games, as they say, different places, same faces. And yeah, you see guys that you don't know in some cases, but you'll have seen their face, in some cases for over 20 years. Not everybody you'll speak to, maybe some
Yeah.
people you'll just nod and wave, but you'll be there and they'll be there, and it's always good, to catch up and talk about things. Uh, just when you were starting off there, one of the games that I remembered, and some of the people watching might also remember, was the League Cup final in 1996, Rangers against Hearts at
Yeah.
Parkhead. Now, I would have been, what, 8 then? But weirdly, I don't remember anything of travelling to the match, but Glasgow was covered in snow that day. And it was actually touch and go if the game was going to go ahead. I just remember standing near Parkhead, just snow belting down. The place was white, just snow everywhere, and waiting around, not knowing what was happening. And then that was the famous game with the fallout between Gaza and Super Ali at half time. And then the game was turned around and we won it. And yeah, I'm sure that was start of the season '96, which also we went on to lift 9 in a row at Tannadice the following May in 1997. So, that's almost 30 years ago. And it's brilliant because, it's me and you talking now, but, you can have various conversations with people. People that have traveled to games, people that are supporters, straight away. And obviously, people will get into Rangers, at different times in their life, and that's absolutely fine. But it's great talking with people, of a similar age and reminiscing about this match and memories of that happen. We could talk all night about certain wee memories. There was a game, Champions League game against Galatasaray in 2000 that I went to with my dad, and
Hmm.
it was a very bad winter's night. Terrible game, nil each. But on the way back, the boat was cancelled. Too rough, couldn't sail. So had to stay in Stranraer. And I believe, well, I don't believe it was the case that we had a lock-in in a club overnight. And for many people, that would be happy days, and I would certainly indulge a bit myself now. But as a kid back then, it was a long night. But you get through it. You do things. It's all part of the story. And it's something I remember. But countless memories like that growing up. Obviously, as we get older, our perspective and the things we do change, and maybe the people we're with. But loads of fantastic, happy memories. Fortunately, watching Rangers at Ibrox, certain away games and European games as well. And I don't get to do as many now, but certainly look forward to doing them when I can.
Yeah, 100%. Just when you're saying about the boat, I vaguely remember a couple of times it was some as you yourself. Sometimes the boat wouldn't sail. Sometimes you actually had to stay on the boat. Sometimes it was like we're going to leave it in order to see how it goes, and then it ended up just being no, you're just docked for the night. Find somewhere to sleep, and then you got the old voucher. You could have like a Mars bar or a bottle of Coke or something, and that was what you got. And you didn't gurn about it, mate. When you just says okay, that's the way it is. But you knew you were taking the chances. I don't know if you ever remember going on the old Troon boat. It was that one there was scared me sometimes going on that one. It was always a terrible sailing. Even if it ever did sail, it was one of the ones that was very rarely it was actually on.
I was never on that going to the football. I do have a few memories of going to Scotland on the old Sea Kit. or the sick cat, as some people called it. But
Oh no.
I don't know. I don't know if I ever went to the football on the Sea Cat, but certainly a few trips going over to Scotland for family things and other stuff. But yeah, we've largely been spoiled with I remember the old regular Stena as it was back in the day, and then the HSS was brilliant. You know, you had a McDonald's on it. There was like 4 or 5 bars. It could get lively at times. There was some good parties on that back in the day. But it was great at the time, but I think eventually it was maybe too expensive to run, and then Stena, as everybody knows, ended up getting rid of it. And there's the other boats that they have on now. But no, all good. We don't get it too bad. You know, compared to, it's a long enough journey, so it was. Uh, you know, and it still can seem long now, but I think we're all well used to it. And you know, plenty of people, like I said, we all make our own sacrifices. There's guys coming up from, you know, from places in England. There's people from Inverness True Blues up from the north of Scotland.
Mhm.
Occasionally,
Yep.
there's guys, you know, from the islands, and then even guys in Glasgow. You know, they, as I say, they make up their own sacrifices, and everybody does their bit. You know, we can't help where we come from or where we live, but you know, it's all about the Rangers and doing what we need to be there.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And this is it, you know. And I know we get, and fair play, you know, especially the Glasgow Bears. You know, they're always giving us kudos for how far we travel, but it's just that we're unlucky. You know, if those same guys were born, you know, where we are in the likes of Lisburn, Belfast, you know, they'd be doing those trips as well. It was just that they're fortunate enough that they live a few doors down, or you know, maybe 15 minutes away, which is good for them. You know what I mean? And I don't begrudge that whatsoever, but it's the trips, you know, and it is enjoyable. But I would say that probably some of the worst experiences for me is definitely the if you've had a bad result in Europe and you're doing that boat back at not getting into midnight. I'm sure that's happened to you a few times, Graham. A few terrible results I remember as well, and you just wanted to get home, but you knew you had that car or bus, depending. Our club used to bring 3 or 4 cars. It worked out cheaper for us that way. But you were
Hmm.
just sitting there and everyone just sitting in silence, sitting on the boat. You just couldn't wait to get home, but you knew it was going to be a long, long night. But you done it anyway, and we kept doing it.
Yeah, there's nothing worse after a bad result, you know. But that's the thing, you know. If you're into football, you know, to win all the time, you know, you're going to be disappointed. And there's nothing wrong with being disappointed at bad results, but you know, we can't win all the time. No team does win all the time, and you know, the last decade or so, you know, we've had more downs than ups. But yeah, as you say, it's not nice coming home late at night after maybe whether it's a European game or just a midweek domestic game. You know, you're not getting home to maybe 2, 3 in the morning. Guys outside of Belfast, you know, will be much later than that. And then some guys will be just maybe getting a shower and going straight into work. The lucky ones will get 2 or 3 hours. Uh, well, the really lucky ones will have a day off. But yeah, but again, it's what you do. You know, you don't do it, you know, for somebody else. You're doing it for yourself and to see your team. But I plenty of stories. You know yourself the ups and downs and how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, no, 100%. But I can't help but smile, you know, because it's just even talking to yourself. I just love I love talking to birds from anywhere, but it's especially the Rangers fans like yourself, Graham, you know, because you've got a common denominator there of doing these things and the traveling on the boat and on the cars and the buses. And you know, we started to fly a wee bit more. I don't know if you've done that a few times. But the problem with that is games changing all the time, and you're going, right, is there a Scottish Cup tie going to be in that time, and is that going to be changed this Sunday? Do we know if we're going to be in Europe? Are we going to be in the Champions League? Are we going to be Thursday nights, Tuesday nights? And it can muddle that up. So I think that's hurt a lot of people as well, mate, trying to get over flights
It
because it is getting
has,
dearer.
and it's difficult. And you know, generally, you know, in recent times, you get to the end of August. You know, whether you're playing Europa League or Champions League, the draws are made, and then you can generally plan. But it's still difficult, and I was even saying to a few mates in Glasgow about meeting up for the Hearts game in September
Hmm.
after the international break. But as one of my mates pointed out, with Premier Sports now having the additional games, what you would have previously taken as almost a banker for a Saturday 3 o'clock, there's a chance, like the Dundee game there last week, that Hearts and other home games like that will be Saturday at 5 o'clock. So it's very, very difficult, especially guys like ourselves who need to plan travel. And it is frustrating. And a lot of people, instantly lash out at the club. To a large extent, there's nothing really that the club can do when the league is contractually, tied into agreements with broadcasters. And basically, once they take the money, they have to go with what the TV companies decide. But it is very annoying and it's frustrating that you can't plan too far ahead. Generally, I wouldn't be getting the a plane to the matches, but even from the start of the season, you can't go, oh, there's a game in November. We'll book flights now, because everybody knows with European games and TV kickoff times, you're almost setting yourself up for a fall or taking a risk. So a lot of it is fairly last minute. But like the supporters clubs have to roll with the punches of you know, maybe getting through a round in Europe, and then this match has changed, or that match is going to be a 5:30 kickoff, and it's difficult. And unfortunately, as supporters, and not just as Rangers supporters, but football supporters across the board, have to deal with a lot of crap. And unfortunately, TV generally rules the roost. We are important when it comes to the whole spectacle of football, but we're most often, considered last. Certainly with the SPFL and the likes of Doncaster, they say they care about football fans, but do they really? I'm not so sure that they do.
No, I wouldn't have thought so myself, mate. I have my own thoughts on Doncaster. It's probably, I would say everyone watching and anyone that's going to be watching after will probably have the same thoughts on the situation as we do, mate. Um, I think they undersell our game and have done for quite some time, but unfortunately, they keep getting voted in, these guys, and there's not much we can do about it, unfortunately. But
Mm.
like, would it really be a risk when you're looking at the money for winning the SPL? It's not a lot. It's peanuts really, and it goes even lower as you go down. So the money isn't really there, mate. It isn't enough to sustain many of the teams really. So I don't think it'd be that much of a risk if they tried something else. But unfortunately, in Scotland, it just doesn't seem something that they're willing to do, mate. They just don't want to think outside the box that way for the league.
I think in some cases, and it's something that they have said, in Scotland, there's the kind of UK wide focus. So in terms of the Premier League, a lot of things are compared when they shouldn't be really. Obviously, Scotland borders England; it's next door. In terms of the two football leagues, they're miles apart. But Sky, is the biggest broadcaster for both leagues. There's no almost separate market in some ways. So I do think we should be getting more money in terms of Scotland as a league. I would have thought there might have been a bit more interest from a streaming type company when the
Hmm.
last deal was up for grabs there. What Sky got, I thought, was very favourable to them. It's typical of Doncaster's reign to go for the safe option and maybe going with the devil, so to speak. But you know, these days though, whether it's Sky or another broadcaster, games generally aren't going to be. There's not going to be too many Saturday 3 o'clock kickoffs now. There's German supporters successfully protested and got Monday night games scrapped. So for any changes in football, unless there's significant and serious opposition to it, it'll go ahead. And in a lot of cases, there isn't really the fight or the will. Uh, we moan and complain, and rightly so. But whenever the game is, the supporters will be there, and we do turn up.
That's it, mate. That is the facts of it, definitely. Just quickly, Graham, I want to chat about your local Rangers supporters club, because I think you have a big anniversary and stuff this year, so it's actually been quite a big year for your club.
Yeah, so I'm a member of Ardoyne Rangers Supporters Club. I joined the club around somewhere around a decade ago. I would need to actually check, but I've been traveling with the club, from I was a kid. I've traveled with different clubs, traveled independently. But around a decade or so ago, I joined the supporters club. Uh, and like I said at the start of the show, if people are watching and considering joining the club, I would say to give it a go. There's no better way of convenient and affordable travel. The more supporters that are traveling with buses, the better for everyone. Different people do a very good job of organising the travel, including the guys at our own club and Davey who runs a bus. But it's important that everybody has their say in running the club and plays their part. But yes, this year is the 50th anniversary of Ardoyne Rangers Supporters Club, so formed in 1975 in Upper Ardoyne, or Loyalist Ardoyne, if you like. So the club's been there, seen it, and done it. Throughout the troubles and over the decades, it has prevailed. Through good times and bad times in different ways. The skull and crossbones there, the badge. The club originated in what was called the Jolly Roger Social Club. So that's where the skull and crossbones comes from. Yourself and quite a few others were in attendance in March. We had a anniversary function, uh, and Stuart McCall and Gordon Jury were over. Fantastic night with live music and a compere. Stan Gordon was over with the guys. So a really good night. It was good for the current membership of the club to see previous members, people we don't see often. But as well as that, there's guys from Lisburn, from Larne, uh, various other places throughout the province. And it was a good, successful night. Everybody, I hope, had a good night. No, it went well. It was really good, and just the type of night that you like being a part of. But at the same time, it was a 50th anniversary celebration, and it wasn't a run of the mill night. You can't always have nights like that, regardless of where you are. So no, it was good. It was a great occasion, good to mark the anniversary, and it was great to see other people uh, from different supporters clubs in different areas. And then at the start of June, we had an anniversary dinner at Crusaders FC, uh, where again live music. We had a good raffle. Various members and ex-members attended, and another good, relaxed social function. And that will continue on through to the end of the year. But it's been good organising a few things, but the club will continue on. The same with others organising travel for members and visitors. Through this season and beyond, and that's what it's all about. You just need to keep going. It's not always easy. A lot of the times it is difficult, and that's the same for all supporters clubs. Different people will know where I'm coming from, but for the club to keep going, you just have to keep going and go with it. The important thing is that people get over to Ibrox and people get access to tickets and get meeting other people and enjoy themselves following Rangers.
Yeah, no, mate, that night you put on was absolutely fantastic. It was actually my father. He would be friends with someone down that direction, and he was like, "Look, there's a wee night going on. Why don't we go?" End up, there's about 8 or 9 of us, I think, came up from Lisburn. Absolutely amazing. Well welcomed by everyone. I remember taking a picture of you guys because you're all with your banner and all up, and I put it up on the page. And I remember you were running about who's these Hans Crosser? Who are they? Who are they? And then you found out I was one of them. We had a great chat. That was the first time we got a proper good chat, mate. And you were interested in what we're trying to do here, and it's good to actually have you on events. But I think I don't know if you think the same, Graeme. What I'm trying to say is the bond we have, especially with people across the water, is amazing. But sometimes I feel like what we do over here sometimes can be underrepresented. So the whole part of doing this show obviously was just try and get the likes of yourself on, mate, just Rangers made from here to put it out there to everyone what the great work you guys do, and everyone does individually. We've had so many people message in the page. We do that every Saturday. We do a different club. We pick them, a local club over here, and they tell us about the charity work they do. That happens every Saturday. But some of the work being done, not just traveling to Rangers Green, but the community work that's going on with the Rangers Club over here is absolutely fantastic, and it's good to be able to showcase that.
Yeah, it's always good to help out others. But I, although I help out a bit with my supporters club, but it's more, other guys that are involved with keeping the club, going on a week to week basis and organising the travel. But no, it's good to have just an outlet for talking about Rangers from a Northern Ireland perspective. And hopefully this segment that you've got going, maybe it can, run alongside the main show. It would be good to have a regular conversation with people, in supporters clubs from various areas, Ballymena, Coleraine, Londonderry, Portadown, Lisburn, wherever. And it's the same maybe people who aren't in supporters clubs, but they're, regular supporters and, telling their own stories. That's what it's about. It's about telling your story, because if you don't, somebody else will. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
always, it won't always be a complimentary story, especially
Yeah.
from detractors. But yeah, it's a good thing that you've got going, and well done for for taking the impetus to get it going. I had heard and seen of the show on Heart and Hand, which I listen to regularly, and I know Davy Edgar going back a long, long time, going back to the early days of the Rangers Supporters Trust. Uh, I know Davy's been very helpful for yourself and Baz and getting the show up and running, and then you guys have run with it. But it's about helping each other out and then spreading the word, and hopefully there'll be many more conversations that you'll have with people after this. 'Cause I'm just an ordinary Rangers supporter, like many hundreds and thousands out there. So good on you. And if somebody watches this tonight and fancies coming on and talking with yourself, good on them.
Yeah, 100%. I was actually had the conversation with a guy today from Coleraine, um, Johnny. So he's part of that Sam English supporters club, which is
Yes,
another
I've
great
heard
one
part of
because
them. Yes.
yeah, so that's good as well because the likes of keeping a memory alive of a ex player from here, which is a class idea. So it'll be good to have him on, And same as yourself, Graeme. Like there's a few guys asking there, like the sniper is asking them to see does Graeme have his own podcast or is he going to be regular? But Graeme's more than welcome to come on at any point. I know you're a busy man, Graeme, but you know the platform's here for you, mate. You'll always be more than welcome.
Yes, thank you. I don't have my own podcast. I do a bit of writing. I'm a freelance writer, so that's what pays the bills. Not as much football stuff at the moment. For a few years, I wrote daily for a website called Vital Rangers, that some people might have heard of. But during that time, I was privileged to get access to Ibrox during lockdown, during the COVID pandemic. So that was quite an experience. Uh, like I said, privileged to be given the access, and I was able to attend a home game against Dundee United. Attended the Celtic game. One wasn't the Scottish Cup game. What was the score? Memory escapes me. It was game Roof scored the header. later on. It might have been 3-1 that day. Somebody with a better memory will keep me right. And most notably was the Slavia Prague game when they beat us in the Europa League, and there was the big incident with Glenn Kamara on the pitch.
Oh yeah, remember
So that was fascinating seeing it at the time. You knew straight away. It was weird, being there in an empty stadium, and you could tell straight away something that happened. Also being kind of up the back of the main stand, you could see Andy Firth kind of giving one of their officials pelters close to the director's box, and he was giving it everything. But no, you could tell straight away on the pitch, a serious incident had happened. And then after the game, there was so much happened trackside, in the tunnel, and then in the dressing room, the old press room at Ibrox. It backed directly onto the dressing room and the players' areas. There's so much commotion going on, and normally, if you're in there, journalists, know everything that was going on. From the outside, people were getting messages like, "What's going on? What's happening?" Nobody kind of knew from the outside watching on TV, what was exactly happening, and then all the
yeah.
journalists and the press didn't know either. It was like over an hour before Stephen Gerrard came in for the press conference. There's a lot of commotion and noise going on. A couple of things that were heard, maybe can't repeat now. But it was fascinating, to have that insight. And as I say, very privileged to be in that position, with a couple of other, effectively fan media outlets. And obviously Davy was there for Heart and Hand at the time. He'll tell you that it was certainly an eventful evening.
Yeah, that sounds like it. Mate, I remember watching that game on the TV, and as you say, being there would have been different. Just from the outside, it looked like for a minute, way just like these wee scuffles happen, and it was hard to tell what was going on really at the time. But then you could see as it was getting longer and it was being prolonged, you were like, right, God knows something bad's been done there. Was there a tackle or something happened off screen that we haven't seen? And then obviously when Gerard came out, and we knew then what it was all about, and we got
I was,
our own back on them. It took us a while, but we got our own back on them eventually.
but I mean, it was disappointing that we didn't go through that night. But I think a big part of it was just the scale of the 55 celebrations, and
Yeah,
the weird times we were living in as it was then. The players were in this bubble. They got it over the line. And then the bubble kind of the bubble went pop. In terms of all the celebrations that followed. The outpouring of joy. From the supporters outside on Edmiston Drive all over Glasgow, and in various places, including over here. And then, how do you go from that mentality of, just elation and joy, to then to be on your game, and to be back on it, to be making inroads in the Europa League. So in hindsight, would you have celebrated differently? No, we wouldn't, because that was a landmark title. It's been too long
yeah,
already, since then. But at the time, it was, given we hadn't won the league since what, 2011. So there was always going to be that just outpouring of celebration and joy. I know that it was controversial as it was at the time, but yeah, it had different impacts, and it was just unfortunate that it did have a knock-on effect for the Europa League straight after it. But we we had a run to Seville, obviously, which brought us one agonising step away from glory, and it wasn't to be. But again, that that's the ups and downs. I was lucky enough to be in Manchester, along with many thousands of other people. I wasn't sure I would see it again. It came around relatively quickly. So you always say, "Oh, it'll never happen again." If it does happen again, we better win, because I don't think I can stomach getting to the edge of glory, and to be pipped to it again. So sorry to give people PTSD by just going to Seville there with my memories and recollections. But yeah, it was great in a lot of ways, but agonizing and awful in others. And I'm sure
Yeah.
everybody has their own stories about that.
Oh well, mine are two devastating stories. One was coming back on an 8-hour boat. We'd done 8-hour boat overnight boat from Liverpool or from Belfast to Liverpool. That was the Manchester one, and we had to do that obviously back again. And then for the Seville game, we booked in Bennett. The cheapest place we could go was Benidorm, and then booked on one of the local buses to get on one of the bars, and then we done an even longer trip to Seville, and that back was overnight. So my two memories of the European finals have been sitting on a bus, a bit like this, hungover, devastation, just the usual, mate. But as I say, then I go and start a podcast. I've got all that much trauma, but I still do it anyway. And you're still going over, mate, and you're still writing about Rangers, and because we just love it, we're addicted to
Yeah,
it, and that's
but
just the way it is.
planes, trains, and automobiles. That's the story. I've been fortunate to do. If you include the two finals, I've done 12 European games over the years. So not as many as I would like to, obviously. And in the recent years with having a kid, priorities, take hold, and the house and the family comes first. With Rangers a very close second. My first European away trip was Villarreal in 2006, and I was still at school then, so I was. There's somebody's weekend ruin, me talking about Seville. Uh, yeah, first European trip was Villarreal back in 2006 when I was still at school. That was that was just a massive eye opener, as a teenager, and hooked ever since. Always say to anybody that hasn't done a European away game, you need to do it at least once. Maybe through practicality, money, family, whatever, but at least do one. Uh, my next one was what a year was the following season was against Osasuna, and that was one of
Hmm.
three bus trips that I've done from Glasgow for European games. Uh, it's a game for young men and drinkers. I don't know if I would be as keen nowadays. Although there's a few buses, it's good to see there's a few buses running to Bruges for the away
Yes.
leg because it's an important tradition. Rangers supporters have been going to Europe, for over 30, 40 years or more. One of my mates, we Sai in Glasgow, he done a bus to Athens in what 93, 94 for AEK, and getting a bus to Greece, and there were in the 90s and 80s. There's lots of stories like that. Plane transport wasn't as readily available as it is now. There's just loads of stories out there, and taking days on a bus, and the toilet's knackered by the time you get to Carlisle. Never mind, across onto the continent. But there's loads of wonderful stories. Trying to think of some of my other ones. I did, I think, 3 games in the run to Manchester. I actually did a bus to Florence. Uh, a guy called Barry Clark ran the bus. It wasn't a District Bar Supporters Club that still runs now, but it was just a bus that was ran from the district. So that one took 36 hours to get to Florence for the semi final. But on the way back, obviously everybody's in cloud nine. It was it could have took 36 days and it was fine. Some buses didn't have toilets, and I'm sure they didn't back in the 70s and 80s. You had to come up with other means. One of my favorite away trips was going to Werder Bremen.
Hmm.
During that run, that was another bus trip, but we did our overnight stay in Amsterdam. So getting shown the bars and the sights of Amsterdam as a young lad was certainly an eye opener, and just a fantastic, you know, experience overall. Going through different countries, seeing Amsterdam, heading through to Germany. Uh, and then I haven't got doing too many in recent seasons. Feyenoord, the two each game, when Morelos scored twice. That's one of my favourites. It's just the atmosphere in the Rangers section that night was electric. It was a dark night. It was raining. Uh, the away end was rocking. Uh, Rangers were on the front foot. We were unlucky not to win. Two great goals by Morelos. There was the away crowd that was at the game. There was a whole, other crowd that were in Amsterdam just watching the match and having a party. I was lucky enough to stay with a friend in Eindhoven for that one, and just a fantastic experience. Feyenoord, proper old school traditional football ground. Feyenoord, some people are like, oh, Feyenoord hate Rangers. They do, but they hate everybody. Proper football club, proper support. It was just what European football is all about. I was very glad to be there, bumping into people here and there. As you say, you see people, you see faces. But that game, that was excellent. And then since then, I've only done two, which was Leipzig for the semi-final first leg, ahead of the final there. What, 3 years ago now, 3 and a bit years ago now. So yes, anybody that hasn't done a European trip, you need to. So we're going to have what, eight coming up, whether, well, four away games as it is now. You have four homes and four away separate, isn't it? With the
Yes,
Europa League
that's right.
and Champions League, it's different. So hopefully we'll get over the line against Bruges, but they'll be a different animal. I'm not sure that the team's ready for that test. We played them in a friendly the other week there, but they've been in the Champions League 4 years out of the last six. They're a proper team,
Oh yeah.
so it'll be very, very tough. You would imagine, we'll need to take a lead out there. Who knows, what will unfold. In recent years, we saw the team getting the job done under Gio at PSV, and then obviously, the Beale season, we got emptied over there by a far superior outfit. And between the
Yeah.
players and the manager, if they don't get their finger out, that could plausibly happen against a very good team in Bruges. So we've got those over the next couple of weeks, but yes, you need to do a European trip. Do another one, even if you've been to 10 or 20. Do another one. You'll love it. Make good memories, and hopefully the team will win. Not too often you're treated to a Rangers win away in Europe, but the game's only part of it. You'll be better off for the experience and the people you'll meet, and 9 times out of 10 you'll have a very good time.
Yeah, definitely made 100%. Um, there's a lot of people comment about that as well in their own wee memories, which is great. I mean, a lot of guys they've done their wee trips and stuff, buses, all different ways of getting there. Um,
Yep.
just quickly, mate, as well as the show runs on, we want to talk a wee bit about the team and stuff as well. But just quickly, you've got a wee project you were talking about yesterday, mate, which is a great wee idea. Well, I'll tell you a wee story after you finish.
Yeah, so I mentioned it to you, and I'm gonna put it out there online for people to get in touch. And it's not about me, but it's something that I've spoken to people about, and it's just something I believe is a very good idea. So I've had in my head for some time the idea of writing a book, or basically putting something together in terms of the history of the Rangers support in Northern Ireland. So as we've talked over the last hour, we all have our own stories, our own memories, but it needs to be recorded, it needs to be out there. um, One thing in my head is that there's a lot of guys who've traveled, including a few people watching. They've traveled through the decades, and they're getting older, uh, and with guys who are elderly or whatever it may be, you know if and when they die, the stories will die with them. So what I'm wanting to do is for people to share their stories, their memories, and the history of Rangers, being a Rangers supporter in Northern Ireland. Like what, how you travel to the match, basically just tell the stories. How was the travel arranged? What did you do? Anything memorable? I'm sure there's people who, I think somebody might have mentioned there that they were in Barcelona in 1972, but whether it was, that game, which is, one of the biggest, if not the biggest in our history, or just the first time you travelled to watch Rangers, it might have been in the 60s or the 70s. There's recorded information of organised travel way before that, from Ulster. So, you know, I want to get in touch with guys like Ian McCall from the Founders Trail. There are various Rangers historians out there. There are also people, who have information, but there may be not sitting on it in terms of not telling anyone, but they haven't had a vehicle maybe to share it with. Various stories, if they're not recorded or if they're not captured, as I say, then they're lost. So I just want to even bring a lot of that information together. It might not even be me that does the book or does the project, and other people, would be more than welcome to get in touch about it. But once you have the information there, you can always go back to it at a later date. Uh, and as well as that, I think it would be nice for older guys to share their stories and to talk about memories. And once you start talking, other things might come to mind, and open up. Uh, you know, Nowadays with the Stena and the P&O, okay, it's a long day, but it's relatively easy. But like I said to you the other night, William, there was the old cattle boat that I've heard about going to Glasgow, and in them days, people life was harder. Doing things was harder. So I would love to hear all about that and to share information. So I will, I'll get you to share an email address for me,
Hmm.
and maybe people can get in contact. But as I say, it's not about me. It's about the stories, and it's about the collective experience and the Rangers support in Northern Ireland. So I want to hopefully build a wee bit of momentum to get people talking about it and then sharing their stories, and we'll get somewhere to send things. If all goes to plan, I would maybe like to organise a couple of recordings, where maybe people could just come together and just share their stories in a comfortable setting. But that's a wee bit down the lane. Let's put the message out there first, and see what comes of it.
Yeah, 100%. Any way we can help you with that, mate, we'll share it. If, even this pop, anything you need, that, mate, because that's sort of what we're about anyway here, and that would be a great idea, especially getting the memories. And just as I was going to say to you, see, as soon as you told me that last night, the first thing I thought about was my dad. He's originally from Suffolk Estate, and I'm sure you know Suffolk, obviously, and
Yes,
traveling from there. And at that time, you didn't know what was across the sea. You know what I mean? You knew Rangers were there, but how do you get there? How do you, do you know what I mean? It was different in the 70s. You couldn't look on YouTube and different things, and or check online to see how you do it and where do you go to this stop to this stop. And he says he just jumped on a few of them from Suffolk that says, right, we're going to watch the Rangers early 70s, and amazing stories. And that's what I said to my dad today. I was like, Dad, this guy Graeme has an amazing idea. You're the kind of birds that he's talking about. You're the kind of people that he needs to talk to get these memories saved for they're there forever. Because you'll be the same as me. I have so many amazing memories from older birds like Sturdy McCallum, who was also from Suffolk Estate, sadly passed away quite a while ago. John Cackey is another great member of our Rangers supporters club. And there are wee memories. Now, obviously, there's memories I remember that they have told me, but there have been many more stories that are gone now, because you didn't have them time capsuled. And I think what you're
that's it.
putting out
And
there, mate, is an absolutely amazing idea.
it's digging into the wider picture. 'Cause you'll get a lot of people going, what the Rangers, have to do with Northern Ireland, whatever else, but it's people may not like to hear it, but it's part of her story. It was the McNeil's mother, was Jean Bain from
Hmm.
County
Yep,
Down, and
correct.
if she doesn't move to Scotland, for a new life, then there is no Rangers basically. People have been going back and forth across the water for work and for life, for hundreds of years, and it feeds into all of that. But there's the story of Sam English. There's countless stories that aren't always well told. There's been plenty of players have come from Ulster or Northern Ireland, throughout the decades. And but the supporters, the one true constant at the club is the supporters, and it's just something that maybe hasn't been done. But everybody's got their story to tell, and it will be a great project, and it's something I'm hoping to get people talking about and to be a part of it.
100%, mate. I'm not sure what you're like for time here, Graham, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on Rangers at the minute and how things are. What's your thoughts? I mean, obviously the 49ers and stuff are in. I think we needed definitely something to happen because we didn't have the money. I think even if you remember with Clement, he basically had said, "Look, we need to sell before we even think about buying." But it's financially we're hopefully in a better place. It looks like we're going to be. Russell Martin's in the job and stuff now. Just your thoughts on all of that, mate. But if you're pressed for time, don't panic. You can make it as short as you need
No,
to.
no, all good. Oh, okay, we're all good for 10, 15 minutes. To be totally honest, when I first heard about the takeover, that it was real, I was a bit hesitant. Uh, my own perspective, my way of doing things, I'm generally not in favor of US ownership and Americanization. There are some horror stories out there of outside takeovers and people getting involved with football clubs that have nothing to do with the club. We've seen it all before in terms of the last decade or so, with people coming into the club that have no love and no interest, and how that panned out. The problem is that through recent seasons, we had Rangers supporters effectively owning the club and running the club, but the guys who were there, from Dave King, Dougie Park, John Bennett, ultimately they ran out of money, but they ran out of road. A lot of the things they done it, for the right reasons, but they weren't good decisions, and there's only so many of those you can make before things change. Uh, the club, to an extent, still is not in a true position. The last few years have been difficult. It's kind of been one false dawn after another. You know, Looking back to last season with the Hampden debacle and playing at Hampden and the signings, it soon became clear that it would just be about getting through the season. I had no real faith in Clement, from early last season. Some people had made their minds up with the games at Ross County and Dundee, at the tail end of the previous season. But
Yeah.
it wasn't even October last season when it was done. We got a bit of a run in Europe, which was decent. Uh, Frustratingly, we got results over Celtic last season. When we couldn't beat anyone else. But at the minute, yes, there are concerns. I wasn't particularly a fan of Russell Martin before. A lot of that was about perception because I don't have the time to watch that much Premier League football. Apart from match of the day here and there, I hadn't seen much of a Southampton team. But I got the drift that he was playing, this open, expansive football, that he didn't have the team to play in such a division. He said that he's learned things from then. But the thing is, for us all, and it's hard when you're watching it, but Russell Martin wasn't brought in by the 49ers and the people they have in charge, because he might be pragmatic and he might have a plan B and he might do this or he might do that. He's brought in because of his way of doing things and his way of playing this possession heavy football. The the stuff the stuff at the back is scary to watch at times. But in terms of running, commitment, running hard, uh, that can't come from the manager. Uh, Certain things, I would like a wee bit of a tweak, but a lot of it comes down to the players. I think the other night, the the European game the other night. There were 7 players that were here last season.
Yeah.
Russell Martin, can say what he wants about giving everybody a clean slate, but these players, have seen off, 2, 3, 4 managers. They're not suddenly going to change. I know sometimes a manager will say something in a press conference and it won't be the exact truth or what not 100% what they mean. But when the manager's publicly backing a player like Kieran Dowell, who's been at Birmingham last season for a who's been at Birmingham last season for a reason, he hasn't been a success at Rangers to date, over 2 different managers. Beale brought him in, didn't work. He hasn't featured, bombed out under Clement. Is it magically going to work? Dowell can be, well, he is frustrating. He's no real long-term future. He's maybe doing a job at the minute, but we can't be seriously pinning our hopes, on a player like Dowell. We need quality to come in certain positions. I'm realistic about the terms of money that we can spend, but at the same time, if we're going to do anything, we need a striker. We need a number 9 who's going to lead the
Yeah.
line and who has the quality. Everybody's pulling their hair out watching Dessers, and so far Dessers, Danilo, one comes in, looks decent for 15 minutes off the bench, starts the next 2 games, they're rubbish, and then rinse and
Yeah.
repeat. We need
Correct.
somebody, we need a number 9 that we can call upon, and for want of a better phrase, we need a Morelos replacement, but we need better than Morelos. But Alfie laid the line. He You knew what you were getting with him. Yes, he was crazy and a maverick and all the rest, but he produced the goods more often than not. But if we're going to do anything, if we're to have a proper go at getting anywhere near a title fight, we need a number 9. We need a proper striker. Obviously, it appears Jeffy's now off to Brazil. That's a deal that has to be done. There is potential in Jeffy, but we need a better player now. So we can't afford that
Exactly.
luxury of maybe he'll come good. There's potential there. Maybe, this, that, the other. So I would like to see, a proper player coming in at left back, because we've yet to see the likes of Asgard and Moore coming in. But, an 18-year-old, as good as he looks, coming in from Spurs, that's a lot of expectation, to put on a kid who's only played a few games. I know he did well under Postecoglou last season. He scored in the Europa League and he showed up. But it, we can't pin our hopes on a player like that. But we need more players to stand up and be counted. Another
Yeah.
one that I think of at the minute is Diomande. Dio is a good player, but he's too inconsistent. Most of his best, I feel, has came in Europe when he's been very good. He's press resistant. There the other night, he feints the run to go one way, he runs the other, and that got us in, and then the goal came from there. But I would be tempted to sell Diomande for maybe bringing in a more robust player. I'm going to say robust. I mean more in terms of output, who will score goals. Will we need players that we can rely on. When we're needing a goal, games like Saturday, Dundee, who's going to grab the team by the scruff of the neck, pull them forward? One of the comments I mentioned about Rothwell. Rothwell was very good for Leeds, and before that in the Championship, he seems to be playing under Martin as just that number 6 to knit the
Hmm.
passes together and get it going. So I'm not sure we're going to see him going forward as much, but he does have a big part to play. The bigger problem is, though, we want everything done yesterday. And
Hmm.
yes, there are big problems to fix. There's an immediate issue, to get the team lifted for these games against Bruges and even for Alloa on Saturday. But being realistic, it is going to take time. That's not to say, we can draw here, there, and everywhere, get beat. and be out of the title by September, October. That's not what I'm saying. Martin said on day one that the team needs to get wins, gets results while they're developing. They absolutely do. There's no reason why they shouldn't be. But overall, another guy that I follow on Twitter, he's been talking about we need to build a team and a club that's capable of winning several league titles, not just one, and then we don't see another one for 6 years. So there's a lot of things going on at the minute. I do have my concerns over Russell Martin, but it is going to take a bit of time. We do need to see more. The other night, against Pilsen, that wasn't acceptable. We got away with it again, so we did. A better team would have had a couple passes in the first half. But look, there's a new opportunity. If the players can lift it against Bruges and get a result, we might be able to pull it off. I would say that's 60-40 in Bruges' favour. That's not to be negative or pessimistic. Like I said earlier, they're a settled team, a settled club. They've been in the Champions League 4 of the last 6 seasons. Yes, it's winnable, but we need to give them the respect that they're due compared to where we are at the moment. So I'm not sure exactly how that'll pan out. But in terms of the league, we need to we need to get it together very quickly. We need more from Martin and from the players. There will still be players to come in and out before the end of the month, but we can't be going into that Celtic game, at a low ebb, kind of where we are now. We need a wee bit of momentum. But it is
Yeah.
going to be bumpy, so buckle in. There will be points dropped by Celtic, but we'll just need to see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the Graham, the other problem is, and it is going to take time, and it's not the 49ers' fault. I'm not saying it's Russell Martin's fault, but because we've had so much failures and being told next year, keep, what I mean, I think we're fatigued that way as a support. But and I know when people are told, look, give it time, everyone's like, I'm fucking sick of giving, I'm sick of giving time. We've talked about this, but I think you're right there, mate. It's as much as we don't like to admit it, it is a complete new regime in. It's a complete different style of football. And if I'm being honest, and you know yourself, mate, you made a comment there about players maybe seeing off 3 or 4 managers. I would just say there's players that we have that don't have the mentality to play for Rangers and definitely don't have the quality to play under this system likes of John Shooter, etc. A great big seas defender, always plays well for Scotland when they're getting, attacked from all angles. He's great that way. But when you're asking likes of big John Shooter to come out at 30 years of age to come out with a ball and pick passes out, he just can't do it, mate. And that's what gets us in a bit of trouble. But as you say, it's going to take time. We're going to need more players in to fit this system. But will the fans give him that time? That's the thing.
Well, ultimately, he doesn't have unlimited time. Uh,
Hmm.
as has been well covered, he wasn't a popular appointment. So straight away people's backs are up. When there's a damaging opening day, dropping of points at Motherwell, followed by not beating Dundee at home. Of course, you're going to get criticism. Walter Smith would have got criticism for that. But
Mm-hmm.
first things first, get tomorrow night out of the way. You need to be beating Alloa. There'll be a few changes. But just my worry is that this run of games, I'm really not sure about rescheduling the St Mirren game in between Bruges ahead of Celtic. I know the situation would have been if it was postponed, then we were potentially going 7 points
Yeah.
into the Old Firm game at the end of the month if they beat Livingston next week. But now, in between two very tough games against Bruges, we're playing St Mirren away. And there's no point looking ahead to Celtic if we drop points against St Mirren. You know,
Mm-hmm.
hindsight will be wonderful. I hope we'll win 3-0 and it all goes to plan. But imagine we don't beat St Mirren. And then, there's this bigger reaction because, then Celtic can maybe open up a bigger points tally. So I'm a wee bit jittery about that decision, to be honest. So tomorrow night should take care of itself. But we would have thought that about Dundee last Saturday. But after
Yeah,
Alloa, you've then Bruges, St Mirren, Bruges, Celtic. That's four proper games. But there's no excuses. We need results. Uh, Not qualifying for the Champions League isn't a deal breaker. Yes, we want to be there for the money side of it at the minute. We would need significant upgrades if we're to avoid, the doing we got the last time. Well, we know what happened, Liverpool, Napoli, and Ajax. So, we don't want anything like that again, but the finance is huge, is crucial for the club
yeah.
if we were to get over that line. If not, if it's Europa League for another season, so be it. That will be okay. We can deal with that, but we have to beat St Mirren next week, and we don't need to look ahead to Celtic. St Mirren is huge because the thought of dropping points again and then going into the derby is, it doesn't bear thinking about. So I would have went with a postponement. I understand why they have gone with it, to get the points on the board or maybe to have Jiga back for Celtic as well. But if we don't beat St Mirren, then it'll not matter who's available for Celtic. The pressure and the expectation and the jeopardy just grows and grows. So
Hmm.
hopefully, tomorrow night can be the first of a run of a few wins, which would be nice. And pragmatically, I would love to qualify for the Champions League, but that, as I say, that can take care of itself. But if we beat St Mirren, obviously you want the Celtic. We all do always, but a draw wouldn't be the worst result in the current context. But two wins, is it possible? Yes. Will we do it? I don't know.
Yeah, no, mate. Like we know, I'm sure yourself, Graham. Like Steve Robinson, he's a cracking manager at that level. He's obviously he's from here. He's actually from my part of the world here, Lisburn. Um, he's a good manager. In my opinion, I'll tip him to be a Northern Ireland manager someday. That's my opinion on I think he's a good manager. I think he will be Northern Ireland manager at some point, maybe later on. He's still early in his career, but he knows what he's at. And if you're a Rangers teammate, you having that win on the board, so going away to his team with low on confidence in the league is a tough ask. But we're going to have to, as you say, mate, we just have to go and do it. There can't be any more excuses. You know what I mean? You go out and you beat them, and it's as simple as that. But hopefully, the likes of Asgard, Mikey Moore, and coming in, maybe that'll give us the keys to unlock these defenses. And I'll tell you, people talk about the low block, and that's fair. That Motherwell teammate played out from the back under this new manager, and they came to play
Hmm.
us, and they were better playing the system we want to play them when we were. And St. Mirren will do the same. It's Steve Robinson. See all this here, low block. Steve Robinson, he don't play that way against Rangers. Yes, he keeps his defence with Gogic and stuff in the defence, but he always comes out to attack Rangers because he believes he can exploit weaknesses. So it'll be an interesting game, definitely. But you have to just, if you want to play for Rangers, mate, and wear that shirt, you just have to go out and get the job done, don't you?
That's it, and especially up to the international break at the end of the month. We do need to see something to believe in. We haven't really had that yet, but I would swap results for performances over the next couple of weeks. Uh, However, as we saw last season with Clement, Beale before that, performances always outlast results. So, performances will results always catch up on performances. So yeah, we're in this situation. We're going to need to just ride it out. But we need results.
Yeah, no, and just before we leave, like, if you remember, Graham, I'm sure you do. Many a game, Walter in his second tenure, you were playing away to Motherwell. The games were awful. Some of the games were terrible to watch, but we got the wins. We always got the
Yeah,
wins. If I remember the likes of the Hearts game and Naismith scoring that late goal as well, mate, we always were there. And yeah, you were like, fuck, we're never going to get this, but we always got through. We always done enough. And that's the same thing. We don't expect this expansive football straight away, but even when you're playing poorly, we still expect the wins, don't we?
Yeah, but that has to come. There's players coming back in, and there needs to be business players coming in and going out before the end of the month. So there's business to be done. There's plenty to unfold over the last 2 weeks of the month. So I really hope, with everyone else, that we come out of August in a better shape than we started it.
100%. As I say, guys, that's sort of us coming to the end now. Graeme, you definitely in the comments, especially, mate. A lot of our guys that listen quite often, they've really enjoyed you, mate, coming on. So that's great. And as I say, you're always welcome. And I hope you felt welcome, and I hope you've enjoyed yourself coming on, mate.
Yes, all good. I'll see you around, mate, and I can be in touch. Not a problem.
100%. Well, guys, thank you everyone for watching. Anyone who's still on, just give us a wee share if you don't mind on your platforms and stuff. Keep an eye out because we're going to share Graeme's idea that he spoke about earlier. Cammy, you're only in, so you're watching late. It's a couple of great ideas. Graeme's come up with a few ideas and stuff for time capsules for UlsterBear. So what we'll do is we'll get that. Graeme, you write something up to me and send the free WhatsApp, mate. I'll add your email to the Facebook, and Big Baz, he runs the Twitter, so he'll put that on Twitter and stuff. And we'll get you tagged in your details, mate, and we will definitely get the ball moving on that one.
Not a problem. Good work, mate. Cheers.
All right. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll be with you Monday. It'll be me and Baz again. Derek Clark's actually coming to guest with us on Monday, so that'll be interesting as well. So thanks to Derek for wanting to come on, which is class. So we've had a couple of good guests. Graeme's been another cracking one. So we'll be with you again on Monday, guys, and thank you all for watching us.